Welcome back to Raven Reports, where we dive into the darkest corners of human behavior. I'm your host, and today's story is one that will make you question how well you really know the people closest to you. This is, he fell face first in the pool, and she just scrolled on her phone for 27 minutes. Before we begin, I want to remind you that what you're about to hear is a work of fiction. The names, characters, and incidents portrayed are the product of creative storytelling. Any resemblance to actual persons living or dead, or actual events, is purely coincidental. The sun was setting over the hills of Westlake, casting long shadows across the expansive backyard of 47 Cypress Lane. The property belonged to Michael and Elise Harmon, a couple whose outward appearance of success masked a relationship that had been crumbling for years. Michael, a 43-year-old investment banker, had built his career on calculated risks. He was meticulous, detail-oriented, and had an uncanny ability to predict market shifts. These same qualities that made him successful in his professional life made him exhausting in his personal one. He micromanaged every aspect of their shared existence, from vacation itineraries planned to the minute to specific instructions on how to load the dishwasher. Elise, 39, had once been an ambitious architect with dreams of designing innovative, sustainable buildings. But over their 15-year marriage, her aspirations had been slowly suffocated by Michael's controlling nature and dismissive attitude toward her career. Now she worked part-time at a small firm, designing modest home renovations, a far cry from the landmark structures she had once imagined creating. Their sprawling 5,000-square-foot home in Westlake's most exclusive neighborhood was a testament to Michael's financial success. The backyard featured an infinity pool that seemed to spill into the valley below, a pool house that was larger than most people's entire homes, and a carefully landscaped garden that required a team of professionals to maintain. But all the luxury in the world couldn't fill the void that had formed between them. They had become strangers living under the same roof, their conversations reduced to logistics and necessities. The silences between them stretched longer with each passing day. It was a Saturday in early September when everything changed. The air still held the warmth of summer, but there was a subtle crispness that hinted at the approaching fall. Michael had spent the morning on calls with clients in Asia, working despite it being the weekend. Elise had gone to brunch with friends, a rare outing that Michael had reluctantly allowed after she had mentioned it 3 separate times over the course of the week. When Elise returned home around 2 p.m., Michael was still in his home office. The door closed. She changed into a bathing suit, grabbed her phone, and headed to the pool to enjoy the afternoon sun. It was one of the few pleasures she still allowed herself, floating in the cool water while staring up at the endless blue sky, imagining a different life. She had been in the pool for about an hour when Michael emerged from the house. He was dressed in swim trunks but still wore his reading glasses and carried his tablet, unable to fully disconnect from work even on a Saturday afternoon. "You've been out here all this time?" he asked, his tone suggesting that there were more productive ways she could have spent her afternoon. Elise didn't bother responding. She had learned long ago that engaging with his passive-aggressive comments only led to arguments that left her feeling drained and diminished. Michael set his tablet on a poolside table and removed his glasses, placing them carefully beside the device. He stood at the edge of the pool, looking down at his reflection in the pristine water. "I closed the Westfield deal," he said, not looking at Elise. "7 figures. The partners are ecstatic." "That's nice," Elise replied, her voice flat. There had been a time when she would have congratulated him enthusiastically, asked for details, celebrated his success. But years of him showing no interest in her work or her dreams had left her unable to muster genuine excitement for his achievements. Michael frowned at her lackluster response. "You could at least pretend to care," he said, the edge in his voice unmistakable. Elise sighed and closed her eyes, letting herself sink deeper into the water. "Congratulations, Michael. That's really great." Her insincere tone only seemed to irritate him further. You know, most wives would be thrilled that their husband just secured their financial future even more solidly. Most husbands might ask their wives how their day was. Elise countered, her eyes still closed. "Fine," Michael said with exaggerated patience. "How was brunch with the girls? Did you all have fun complaining about your husbands and drinking overpriced mimosas? Elise opened her eyes and looked at him, really looked at him, wondering how this bitter, condescending man was the same person she had fallen in love with all those years ago. Actually, we talked about Diane's new exhibition. She's featuring her work in a gallery downtown next month. Diane? The one who makes those weird sculptures out of trash? That's hardly what I'd call art. Michael scoffed. Something inside Elise snapped. It wasn't just his dismissal of her friend's work. It was the culmination of years of similar dismissals, of her ideas, her opinions, her dreams, her very self. You know what, Michael? Not everything needs to meet your approval to have value, she said, her voice stronger than it had been in years. Michael looked surprised at her tone. He wasn't used to her pushing back. I'm just saying, calling something art doesn't automatically make it so. And being able to make money doesn't automatically make you right about everything, Elise retorted. She pulled herself out of the pool and reached for her towel, suddenly not wanting to be in his presence. Michael's face flushed with anger. Where do you think all this comes from? He gestured broadly at their home, the pool, the view. My ability to make money, as you so dismissively put it, is what gives you the luxury to lounge by the pool all day and go to brunches with your friends who play at being artists. Elise wrapped the towel around herself, her hands shaking with suppressed rage. I never wanted all this, Michael. I wanted a partner, someone who respected me and supported my dreams the way I supported yours. Your dreams? Michael laughed, but there was no humor in it. Your dreams were unrealistic. I did you a favor by helping you see that before you wasted years chasing something that was never going to happen. The casual cruelty of his words hit Elise like a physical blow. She had suspected that he didn't believe in her talent, but hearing him say it so bluntly made something inside her shrivel and die. You didn't help me, she said quietly. You crushed me, systematically, deliberately, until I was small enough to fit into the box you wanted me in. Michael rolled his eyes. Always so dramatic. This is exactly why you never would have made it as a serious architect. Everything is always about your feelings. Elise picked up her phone from the table where she had left it. I'm going inside. I can't do this anymore. Can't do what anymore? Have a simple conversation without turning it into a therapy session? Michael called after her. Elise stopped and turned back to face him. No, Michael. I can't do us anymore. Michael's expression changed. A flicker of something, fear perhaps, crossing his features before his face hardened again. What is that supposed to mean? It means I'm done, Elise said, surprised at how calm she felt now that the words were out. I've been done for a long time. I just didn't have the courage to admit it. Michael took a step toward her, his body tense. You're not leaving me. It wasn't a plea or a question. It was a command, delivered with the same authority he used in the boardroom. And for the first time, it had no effect on Elise. Yes, I am, she said simply. Michael moved closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You signed a prenup, remember? You walk away. You get nothing. Elise looked around at the expensive prison she had lived in for the past decade. I don't want anything from you, I just want out. Michael grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into her flesh. You're being ridiculous. You're upset about something, and you're not thinking clearly. We'll talk about this later when you've calmed down. Elise looked down at his hand on her arm, then back up at his face. Let go of me, Michael. Not until you promise to stop this nonsense, he insisted, tightening his grip. With her free hand, Elise pried his fingers off her arm. Don't touch me again, she warned, stepping back from him. Michael's face contorted with rage. Or what? What exactly do you think you're going to do? Where do you think you're going to go? You have nothing without me. No money, no career, no prospects. You really think you're going to walk away from all this and start over at almost 40? His words were designed to wound, to remind her of her dependence on him, to make her doubt herself. It was a tactic he had employed countless times before, but something had changed inside Elise. The fear that had kept her bound to him for so long had finally been eclipsed by her desperation to be free. Yes, she said. That's exactly what I'm going to do. She turned and started walking toward the house. Behind her, she heard Michael let out a string of expletives. Then came the sound of quick footsteps on the concrete pool deck. She braced herself, thinking he was coming after her, but instead she heard a splash. Elise turned around just in time to see Michael's body hit the water face first. It wasn't a dive. It looked more like he had tripped or slipped. For a moment, she waited for him to surface, to emerge sputtering and angry, blaming her somehow for his fall. But he didn't. Michael's body floated face down in the water, motionless. Elise stood frozen, watching, waiting. 1 second stretched into 5, then 10. Still, he didn't move. A voice in her head urged her to jump in, to pull him out, to perform CPR if necessary. But another voice, one that sounded strangely calm and detached, whispered, "Wait." So she did. She stood at the edge of the pool, her phone clutched in her hand, watching as her husband's body drifted gently in the crystal-clear water, pushed by the subtle current from the pool's filtration system. 1 minute passed, then 2. Elise knew she should do something, call for help, try to save him, but she couldn't make herself move. It was as if she were watching a scene in a movie, something happening to strangers, not to her and the man she had once loved. 3 minutes now. Michael's body had drifted to the shallow end of the pool. Elise could see a small cloud of red dispersing in the water around his head. He must have hit his head when he fell, she realized. That would explain why he hadn't surfaced. 4 minutes. 5. Elise finally took a step toward the pool, then stopped. What if he was faking? What if this was some elaborate ploy to make her show concern, to draw her back in? It wouldn't be the most manipulative thing he had ever done. But even as the thought formed, she knew it wasn't true. Michael was many things, but he wasn't that good an actor, and no one could hold their breath this long. 6 minutes. 7. Elise's hands were shaking now. She should call 911. She should jump in and pull him out. She should do something, anything. Instead, she unlocked her phone and opened Instagram. With trembling fingers, she scrolled through her feed, looking at photos of friends' vacations, meals, pets, children. Normal life continuing all around the world while her husband's body floated in their pool. 8 minutes. 9. 10. Elise sat down on one of the poolside loungers, her eyes moving mechanically from her phone screen to Michael's motionless form and back again. She didn't feel anything. Not fear, not grief, not even relief. Just a strange, hollow emptiness. 11 minutes. 12. 13. On her phone, a video of a puppy learning to navigate stairs made her smile reflexively. Then she remembered where she was, what was happening, and the smile died on her lips. 14 minutes. 15. 16. She opened her email and saw a message from her boss about a client meeting on Monday. Would she still be going to that meeting? Would she be in jail? How did one even begin to explain something like this? 17 minutes. 18. 19. She opened her weather app. Tomorrow would be sunny, 72 degrees. Perfect weather for a funeral, she thought, and the macabre nature of her own thinking startled her. 20 minutes. 21. 22. She texted her sister, "Can I stay with you for a while?" Then deleted it before sending. It was too soon, too suspicious. She would need to call 911 first, go through the motions of trying to save him, express the right amount of shock and grief. 23 minutes. 24. 25. She wondered idly if the security cameras that Michael had installed around the property had captured his fall. The police would want to see that footage. Would they believe it was an accident? Or would they somehow know that she had stood by and done nothing while there might still have been a chance to save him? 26 minutes. 27. Elise finally put down her phone and stood up. It was time. She had waited long enough. Whatever happened next, she would face it. She took a deep breath and reached for her phone again, this time to call for help. But before she could dial, a sound broke the silence. A wet, gasping cough from the pool. Elise froze, her finger hovering over the screen. It wasn't possible. No one could survive that long underwater. Yet there was Michael, rolling over in the water, his face emerging, red and contorted as he coughed and retched. He flailed weakly, making his way to the pool steps, dragging himself up and out of the water. Elise stood paralyzed with shock as her husband collapsed on the concrete deck, coughing up water, his body heaving with the effort to breathe. His forehead had a deep gash that was still bleeding, turning the pool water around where he had been pink. "Michael?" she said, her voice barely audible. He looked up at her, his eyes wild and unfocused. "Help," he gasped between coughs. "Call 911. Elise nodded and finally did what she should have done nearly half an hour ago. As she spoke to the dispatcher, giving their address and explaining that her husband had fallen into the pool and hit his head, she watched Michael struggling to breathe. He was alive. Somehow, against all odds, he was alive. When the paramedics arrived 12 minutes later, Michael was sitting up, still coughing occasionally, but breathing more normally. The bleeding from his head wound had slowed, and he seemed oriented to time and place. He answered the paramedics' questions coherently, explaining that he had been walking along the edge of the pool, had felt dizzy, and had fallen in. "I must have hit my head on the way down," he said, wincing as one of the paramedics examined the gash on his forehead. "Next thing I knew, I was underwater, trying to figure out which way was up." "You're lucky," the paramedic said. "Head injuries and water are a dangerous combination. You could have drowned." Michael's eyes found Elise, who was standing a few feet away, hugging herself. "My wife was here," he said. "She must have been about to jump in and save me when I managed to surface." Elise felt her heart skip a beat. Was he covering for her? Did he not remember how long he had been in the water? Or did he simply assume she would have helped him if he hadn't regained consciousness on his own? "Actually," Elise began, not sure what she was going to say next. Confess? Lie? Some combination of the two? Michael cut her off. "She's in shock," he told the paramedics. "She's been through a lot today." The paramedics nodded sympathetically and turned their attention back to Michael. They advised him to go to the hospital for a CT scan to rule out a serious brain injury, but Michael refused. "I'm fine," he insisted. "Just a little bump on the head. Nothing some rest won't fix." After making him sign a form acknowledging that he was refusing medical transport against their advice, the paramedics packed up their equipment and left, leaving Elise and Michael alone once more. The silence between them was heavy with unspoken questions. Michael was the first to break it. "You didn't try to help me," he said quietly. No accusation in his tone, just a statement of fact. Elise couldn't bring herself to deny it. "No," she admitted, "I didn't." Michael nodded slowly, as if her confirmation was exactly what he had expected. "How long was I under?" Elise swallowed hard. "About 27 minutes. Michael's eyes widened. "That's not possible. No one can hold their breath that long. I would have drowned." "I know," Elise said. "I thought you had." Michael touched the gash on his forehead gingerly. "I remember hitting my head, then everything went black. The next thing I knew, I was coughing up water." "You were floating face down the whole time," Elise told him, "not moving. There was blood in the water." Michael was silent for a long moment, processing this information. "And you just watched? You didn't call for help? Didn't try to pull me out?" Elise looked down at her hands, unable to meet his gaze. "I was going to. I had my phone in my hand to call 911 when you suddenly surfaced." "After 27 minutes, Michael repeated, his voice hollow. "Yes." "What did you do during those 27 minutes, Elise?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Elise felt a flush of shame creep up her neck. "I scrolled on my phone," she whispered. Michael's laugh was harsh and disbelieving. "You scrolled on your phone while you thought I was drowning? While you thought I was dead?" Elise had no defense to offer. What she had done, or rather what she had failed to do, was indefensible. She had stood by and, at the very least, allowed her husband to nearly die. At worst, she had silently hoped he would. "I think," Michael said slowly, "that we should talk about what happened right before I fell." Elise nodded, bracing herself for his anger, for accusations, for threats. "You said you wanted out," Michael continued. "You said you were done." "Yes," Elise acknowledged. "And then I fell into the pool, Hit my head and nearly drowned, Michael said. And you did nothing to help me? Yes, Elise repeated, her voice barely audible. Michael was silent for a long moment, studying her face. Did you push me? The question hung in the air between them, sharp and dangerous. Elise's head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock. What? No, I was walking away from you when you fell. I didn't touch you. Michael held her gaze, searching for the truth in her eyes. But you wanted me dead, he said. It wasn't a question. Elise opened her mouth to deny it, but found she couldn't. In those 27 minutes, as she had watched him floating face down in the water, had she hoped he was dead? Had some dark hidden part of her been relieved at the thought of her life without him? I don't know, she said finally, truthfully. I don't know what I wanted. Michael nodded slowly, as if her honesty, however damning, was something he could respect. I think you do know, he said quietly. I think you wanted to be free of me, and for a few minutes there, you thought you were. Elise felt tears welling in her eyes. Not for Michael, but for herself, for the woman she had become, capable of such cold detachment in the face of another human being's suffering. Even if that human being was someone who had caused her pain, what did it say about her that she could stand by and do nothing? I'm sorry, she whispered, though she wasn't entirely sure what she was apologizing for not helping him, for wanting him gone, for not being strong enough to leave years ago, before things had deteriorated to this point. Michael's expression softened slightly. You know what the strangest thing is? When I was underwater, struggling to find the surface, I had this moment of perfect clarity. I saw our marriage for what it really was. I saw myself for what I'd become. Elise looked at him in surprise. This was not the reaction she had expected. I've been controlling and dismissive, Michael continued. I've made you small because it made me feel big. I've been cruel. The admission seemed to cost him something, a crack appearing in the armor of self-righteousness he had worn for so long. Yes, Elise agreed. You have. Michael winced at her blunt agreement, but nodded. I deserved your anger. Maybe I even deserved those 27 minutes of you doing nothing. But Elise, what happens now? Where do we go from here? It was a good question. What did happen when a marriage reached this point? When one spouse could watch the other potentially dying and feel nothing? Was there any coming back from that? Should there be? I don't know, Elise said honestly. I meant what I said before you fell. I want out. I need out. Michael was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the pool where he had nearly died. Okay, he said finally. Elise blinked in surprise. Okay? I won't fight you on this, Michael said. No contests about the prenup. No dragging things out in court. Clean break. You want out, you're out. Elise felt a wave of relief so intense it made her dizzy. After all the years of control, of emotional manipulation, was he really going to let her go so easily? Thank you, she said cautiously, still not quite believing it. Michael stood up slowly, wincing as the movement seemed to cause him pain. Don't thank me, he said. This isn't generosity, it's self-preservation. Elise frowned, not understanding. You stood there for 27 minutes, Elise. You watched me floating face down in that pool, bleeding, drowning, and you did nothing. You scrolled on your phone. Michael's voice was level, but there was an undercurrent of something that might have been fear. I don't think I can sleep under the same roof as you anymore. The words hit Elise like a slap. She had been so focused on her own desire to escape that she hadn't considered that Michael might feel the same way about her after what had happened. I'll go stay with my sister, she said, until we can sort things out legally. Michael nodded. That would be best. As Elise turned to go into the house to pack a bag, Michael spoke again. Elise? She stopped but didn't turn around. Yes? Those 27 minutes. They changed everything, didn't they? Elise considered the question. Had those 27 minutes changed everything? Or had they simply revealed what was already there? The death of love, the birth of indifference, the capacity for darkness that existed within her. Yes, she said finally. They changed everything. What Elise didn't say, what she would never say to Michael or to anyone else, was that during those 27 minutes, as she scrolled mindlessly on her phone while her husband floated face down in their pool, she had felt something she hadn't experienced in years: peace. And that perhaps was the most terrifying revelation of all. As she walked into the house, leaving Michael standing by the pool where he had nearly died, Elise knew that she would never be the same person she had been before those 27 minutes. Whether that was a good thing or a terrible one, only time would tell. Detective Sarah Reeves set down the case file and looked across her desk at Elise Harmon. 3 weeks had passed since the incident at the pool. 3 weeks during which an anonymous tip had led the police to question whether Michael Harmon's accident had been entirely accidental. "So that's your statement?" Detective Reeves asked. "You maintain that you did not push your husband into the pool, that he fell on his own, hit his head, and was unconscious in the water for nearly half an hour while you scrolled on your phone?" Elise met the detective's skeptical gaze steadily. "Yes, that's exactly what happened. And you didn't call 911 because—" "I was in shock," Elise said, the explanation sounding weak even to her own ears. "I couldn't believe what was happening. I kept thinking he would surface at any moment." Detective Reeves leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable. "Mrs. Harmon, I've been a detective for 15 years. I've seen all kinds of domestic situations go bad in all kinds of ways. But I have to say, your story is one of the most unusual I've encountered." Elise said nothing, waiting. "The security footage from your home shows your husband falling into the pool." Detective Reeves continued. "There's no evidence that you pushed him. In fact, you were several feet away when he fell." Elise felt a flicker of relief, quickly suppressed. She knew the footage would clear her of actually causing Michael's fall. But what about what came after? The 27 minutes during which she had done nothing. "However," Detective Reeves said, her tone hardening, "the footage also shows you standing by the pool, watching your husband floating face down in the water for 27 minutes before he miraculously regained consciousness on his own, during which time you made no attempt to help him, call for assistance, or even show any visible distress." Elise swallowed hard. "As I said, I was in shock. Shock doesn't typically involve checking social media," Detective Reeves countered. "The footage clearly shows you looking at your phone, Mrs. Harmon, scrolling, typing, completely engaged with your device while your husband was potentially dying a few feet away." "I wasn't thinking clearly," Elise insisted. Detective Reeves studied her for a long moment. "The thing is, Mrs. Harmon, while your behavior was certainly unusual and, frankly, disturbing, it's not actually criminal. You had no legal duty to rescue your husband." Elise blinked in surprise. "I don't understand." "In this state, there's no general duty to rescue another person, even your spouse, unless you created the peril they're in," Detective Reeves explained. "Since we have clear evidence that you didn't push your husband into the pool or otherwise cause his fall, you weren't legally obligated to try to save him. So, I'm not in trouble?" Elise asked cautiously. Detective Reeves's smile was cold. "Not legally, no, morally. Well, that's between you and your conscience." Elise felt a weight lift from her shoulders, even as a new one settled in its place. She wasn't going to be arrested, but the detective's judgment, which she suspected would be shared by anyone who knew what had happened, was its own kind of punishment. "There is one more thing," Detective Reeves said, her tone shifting. "The medical examiner found something unusual when reviewing your husband's medical records." Elise tensed. "What do you mean?" "Your husband had a condition called shallow water blackout. It's rare, but it can cause swimmers to lose consciousness underwater without warning. Usually it's fatal, but in your husband's case, it seems he was one of the lucky few who regained consciousness before drowning." "I didn't know that," Elise said truthfully. "Michael never mentioned any medical conditions. According to his doctor, he was diagnosed 6 months ago," Detective Reeves said. "He was specifically advised to never swim alone for this very reason." Elise felt a chill run through her. Michael had known he had a condition that could cause him to black out in water, yet he had never told her. He had been swimming alone in their pool regularly for the past 6 months, despite medical advice to the contrary. "He didn't tell me," she repeated, trying to process this new information. Detective Reeves nodded. That's what his doctor said. Apparently, Mr. Harmon insisted that the diagnosis be kept confidential, even from you. Why would he do that? Elise wondered aloud. That's what I've been asking myself, Detective Reeves said. Why would a man hide a potentially life-threatening condition from his wife? Unless... She left the sentence unfinished, but the implication hung in the air between them. Unless he was planning something. Unless he wanted something to happen. You think he wanted to drown? Elise asked, incredulous. That's ridiculous. Michael would never... Not drown, Detective Reeves interrupted, but perhaps create a situation where it looked like you had tried to kill him, or where you had neglected to help him in a life-threatening situation? Elise's mind raced. Could Michael have engineered the whole incident? Could he have deliberately provoked their argument by the pool, knowing it might lead to a confrontation where he could stage an accident? Could he have been conscious underwater the whole time, watching through nearly closed eyes as she did nothing to help him, building a case against her? That's crazy, Elise said. But even as she spoke, she wasn't sure she believed her own words. Michael was manipulative, controlling. But was he capable of something that elaborate, that dangerous? Maybe, Detective Reeves agreed. Or maybe it's just a strange coincidence that a man with a known risk of underwater blackouts happened to fall into a pool during an argument with his wife about ending their marriage, and then miraculously survived after being unconscious underwater for a length of time that should have been fatal. Put like that, it did sound suspicious. But if Michael had planned it all, why had he agreed to the divorce so readily afterward? Why not use the incident to further control her, to paint her as unstable or dangerous? I don't know what to think, Elise admitted. Detective Reeves closed the case file. Well, Mrs. Harmon, without evidence of a crime, there's not much more for me to investigate. Your husband isn't pressing charges, and as I said, you had no legal duty to rescue him. So that's it? Elise asked. It's over? The investigation is closed, Detective Reeves confirmed. But Mrs. Harmon, a word of advice? Whatever is going on between you and your husband, whatever game is being played here, be careful, very careful. Elise nodded, chilled by the detective's words and by her own swirling thoughts. As she left the police station, she felt as if she were walking away from one mystery, only to step into another. Had Michael orchestrated the whole thing? If so, to what end? And if not, what did it say about their marriage, about her, that she could believe him capable of such a thing? 6 months later, Elise sat across from her lawyer, signing the final divorce papers. The process had been surprisingly smooth. True to his word, Michael hadn't contested anything. In fact, he had been unexpectedly generous, agreeing to a settlement that gave Elise enough money to start over comfortably. That's the last one, her lawyer said, taking the signed document. Once Mr. Harmon signs these, which his lawyer assures me he'll do today, you'll be officially divorced. Thank you, Elise said, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Relief, certainly, but also lingering confusion about how easily everything had fallen into place after years of Michael's controlling behavior. As she left the lawyer's office, her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Opening it, she found a single sentence that made her blood run cold. 27 minutes was all it took to see who you really are. Elise stared at the message, her heart pounding. There was no question who it was from. No one else would know the significance of those 27 minutes. Another text came through. Don't worry, your secret is safe with me. After all, I have one of my own. Elise's hands shook as she typed a response. What do you want, Michael? The reply came almost immediately. Nothing. Not anymore. We're even now. Even? What did that mean? Elise typed frantically. You planned it all, didn't you? The fall, the blackout. And you knew I wouldn't help you. 3 dots appeared, indicating Michael was typing. Elise waited, hardly breathing, for his response. I knew who you had become. I just needed to see it for myself. And I needed you to see it too. Elise felt sick. Had he really risked his life just to prove a point about her character? Or was there more to it? "Why let me go so easily then?" she typed. "If you wanted to punish me, why agree to the divorce? Why the generous settlement?" The response took longer this time. When it came, it wasn't what she expected. "Because I loved you once, and because 27 minutes of watching you scroll on your phone while I floated face down in our pool taught me something important." "What?" Elise typed, dreading the answer. "That we deserved each other." Elise stared at the words, feeling their truth cut through her. They had deserved each other. She, with her passive resentment that had curdled into something dark enough to let her watch him potentially drowning without acting, and he with his controlling nature that had apparently evolved into something calculated enough to stage his own near-drowning to prove a point. "Goodbye, Elise," came Michael's final text. "I hope you find what you're looking for." Elise didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. She put her phone away and continued walking down the street, toward her new apartment, her new life. She felt lighter than she had in years, but there was a shadow that followed her. The knowledge of those 27 minutes, of what she had done, of what she had been capable of. Some secrets Elise knew you never really leave behind. They become part of you, changing you in ways both subtle and profound. Her 27 minutes of scrolling while Michael floated face down in the pool would always be with her, a reminder of the darkness that lived inside her, of the thin line between victim and perpetrator, between the wronged and the wrong. As for Michael, wherever he was, whatever game he had been playing, Elise hoped he had found what he was looking for too, even if that was just the cold satisfaction of knowing he had been right about her all along. In the end, perhaps that was the most fitting conclusion to their story. Two people who had brought out the worst in each other, finally free to become whoever they might have been if they had never met at all. And as Elise walked away from her old life toward whatever waited ahead, she made a silent promise to herself. No matter what happened next, she would never again be the woman who scrolled on her phone for 27 minutes while someone drowned. Whether she could keep that promise, only time would tell. Thanks for watching this episode of Raven Reports. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Until next time, remember, the darkest stories aren't always about strangers. Sometimes they're about the people we think we know best.